I'm Elena Bennett, 32, living in the heart of the city, where the buzz of life is constant, yet somehow, I've always felt out of place. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I had it all figured out. Until I didn't. I spent years being the good daughter, the one everyone could count on. My family? They needed me, emotionally, financially. I was their everything. The one they turned to when things went wrong. And for a long time, I believed I was doing the right thing. After all, they were family, right? But here's the thing. They never stopped asking. They didn't know where the line was, and neither did I. Until one day, I realized I was drowning in their needs, their expectations, my own dreams shoved aside. And that's when I knew, enough is enough. I had to walk away, stop being the family ATM, the emotional punching bag, and start living for me. But, as you might expect, that's when the real drama began. Now I'm here, ready to take back control. The road to freedom isn't as simple as it seems, but I'm not going down without a fight. Hey, quick reminder. If you're ready to break free from what's holding you back, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. Let's dive in. It was one of those days where you feel the universe is just waiting for you to crack. The minute my phone lit up with my mom's name, I knew. I just knew what was coming. And sure enough, as soon as I picked up, I could hear the glee in her voice. That tone she always used when she thought she was about to hit me with a big surprise. Sweetheart, guess what? We just gave Max $250,000 for his new house. Isn't that just the best news? I felt the blood drain from my face. The very same house Max had been eyeing for months. The one I'd heard about 1,000 times, but never had a single mention of my financial struggles. It took every ounce of control to hold the phone steady, to not let the frustration show. That's amazing, Mom. Really? It's great, I forced out, smiling as wide as I could. But inside? Inside, I felt like I was being suffocated by a tidal wave of resentment. It wasn't just the amount, it was the principle. Max had barely worked a day in his life, always coasting, always skating by, depending on family to bail him out. And here I was, 32 years old, working my ass off every single day, building a 7-figure consulting business from scratch, paying off my parents' debts, fixing their problems, and now funding Max's $250,000 house because family helps family. But none of that mattered to them. Not once had they cared about my sacrifices. No acknowledgement of the countless hours I'd spent away from my own life to make sure they could live comfortably while I paid their mortgage. No thank you for covering Dad's medical bills when his insurance refused to help. Not even a word when I took out a loan to cover Max's failed business ventures. None of it mattered. Oh, sweetie, you know we always wish we could help you too, but we understand with your lifestyle you're focused on other things, she continued, totally oblivious to the fire building in my chest. My lifestyle choices? Like building a business from nothing? Like paying their bills for years when things went south? Like covering for Max every time he got himself into trouble? But sure, my choices were the problem. Mom, I interjected, trying to keep my voice light. I get it. Really, I do. I know I can't be expected to help everyone all the time. You know, with my business and everything. She didn't catch the sarcasm. Of course she didn't. We're just so happy for Max, honey. He's been working so hard and now he can finally settle down. And guess what? He picked out the perfect house. It's a 5-bedroom mansion in a gated community. Can you believe it? I bit down hard on my lip to stop myself from screaming. But then, as if the universe had finally given me a moment to breathe, I saw the notification flash across my phone. Bank account accessed. Not one access attempt, not 2, but 5. They were trying to break into my account, the one I'd closed down months ago, the one I thought was safe, the one I'd spent months trying to keep them out of because I knew they'd try something like this. I needed to calm down. Mom, listen, I gotta go. Client meeting. I cut her off before she could continue. Say hi to Dad for me. Love you. Before she could protest, I ended the call. I didn't even bother looking at my phone after that. Instead, I opened up the bank app. Sure enough, the attempts had escalated. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering in my chest. They thought they could still use me, still access my money like I was some kind of endless piggy bank. But no more. I texted Monica, who knew everything, the truth no one else did. "It's happening. They found out." She replied almost immediately. "Holy hell. You really did it? You good?" Good? I looked at my reflection in the window, 32 years old, self-made, and finally done being the family bank. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I opened a document I'd been keeping for years, every loan, every transfer, every single payment I'd made to my family over the years. I stared at the final total, 4,582,876, nearly 4.6 million, all of it drained from me. And for what? To cover their bad decisions. To keep them afloat while I barely scraped by. To let them believe I'd always be there to pick up the pieces. Another buzz from Monica. "You okay? Want me to come over and bring wine? We can burn some family photos." I snorted. "Not today, but you might want to see this." I pulled up a spreadsheet with a new column. Max's house fund. I'd been tracking every penny I'd given them, every penny they'd drained from me over the years. It wasn't just that they were taking advantage of me, it was the manipulation, the guilt trips, the endless promises of, "we'll pay you back," that never came. I'd been the good daughter, the reliable one, the one who never got anything in return except more requests. Max. The house, 250,000, all of it was mine, not his. Not theirs, mine. And I was done. Done being the one who fixed everything. Max's face flashed across my mind, his smug grin as he proudly announced his new house. He thought it was all going to come together because of me. He thought wrong. Another message came in, this time from Max. His tone was frantic, panicked. "Elena, you have to help. You've got to help. The account's empty. You have to bail me out. I can't lose this house." I rolled my eyes. This was the moment. He was desperate. I had him exactly where I wanted him. "Max," I said, voice cool, detached. "It's not empty. It's closed. There's a big difference." "What the hell do you mean closed? We need that money." I let out a laugh, actually laughed, as I stared at the numbers. "You needed $250,000 for a house? Guess you didn't need it that bad." His response was a string of insults. "You're just bitter. You always think you're better than everyone else." I cut him off. "No, Max. I've always been convenient, and you've always taken advantage of me." The doorbell rang. I checked the security camera, my parents looking panicked. Max stood behind them, less confident now that things were falling apart. I closed my laptop, took a deep breath, and stared out the window. They had no idea what was coming next. They had no idea that the family ATM was about to shut down for good. Monica's message popped up. "Want to meet up later? This is crazy." I looked at my phone, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from the anticipation of what I was about to do. I wasn't their backup plan anymore. I wasn't anyone's safety net. The next chapter in this family drama was about to unfold, and I was done playing the role they had assigned to me. No more saving them, no more bailing them out, no more money, no more sacrifices. They'd have to figure it out themselves. I watched as my parents stood at the door, their faces flushed with worry, Max hovering behind them like a shadow. They had no idea what I was about to do. I could feel the tension building in my chest, that familiar pressure of doing something I'd never done before, standing up for myself, finally. I let them knock a few more times, letting the weight of the moment sink in. The last few years had been a slow burn, and now it was time to stop pretending I was okay with being the family ATM. I opened the door, my face calm, my voice even. "Hey, Mom, Dad, what's going on?" My mom's eyes were red-rimmed from crying. She immediately stepped forward, but her voice trembled with the same manipulation I'd grown so used to. "Elena, honey, we need to talk," she started, but her words were loaded with guilt. "Max is in trouble, and we need your help. You know how much this house means to him, and now he's in danger of losing it." I raised an eyebrow, crossing my arms. How much does this house mean to him? Enough that he didn't even think to ask me if I could afford to help him? After everything I've done for you guys? There was a sharp silence. My dad cleared his throat, shifting uneasily. Sweetheart, we've all been struggling. But Max, he's our son. You understand. He's still trying to find his way. The house, it's just a big step. He deserves this, and you have so much. It's just the way families help each other. The guilt trip was textbook, classic. I had heard it 1,000 times. This was the manipulation that had run through the family for decades. But this time, something in me snapped. The story had been the same for years. I helped them when they couldn't afford their bills, when they were too proud to ask anyone else. I picked up the pieces, paid the debts, and never asked for anything in return. And yet, they treated me like I owed them more. Is this how it's going to be then? My success is a requirement for your happiness? I asked, my voice dangerously calm now. What happened to me, Dad? You always taught me to work hard, to be responsible. And now, when I do exactly that, you come to me to fix everyone else's problems. Mom's eyes filled with tears, and Dad's face reddened with frustration. They had no real answer, because they knew deep down what I was saying was true. They had used me. They had drained me dry, and it had never been enough. Do you even hear yourselves? I continued, feeling the power of my words. Max didn't work for this house. I worked for everything I have. He's been handed everything, and you're asking me to bail him out again. You've been doing it for years. You took $300,000 from me over the last decade for emergencies, loans for vacations, the car repairs, the anniversary cruises. And now this? $250,000 for a house? Dad opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off. You don't even see it, do you? You taught me that family means giving, always giving. But you never taught me that I am allowed to take. I never got a thank you. I never got anything. I've been paying for everyone's mistakes while watching my own life pass by. Max stepped forward, his voice rising. You think we asked for this? We didn't ask for you to always be the one with all the money. We didn't ask for you to have everything while we barely get by. You're the one with the fancy business, the house, everything you ever wanted. And now you're too selfish to help your own family? Selfish? I scoffed. Let me tell you what's selfish, Max. You've been sucking the life out of me for years. Every time you needed something, I was there. Every time Mom and Dad couldn't afford their bills, I paid them. And you're right. I do have a good business. I do have money, but guess what? It's mine, not for you, not for anyone else, and I'm done being the one who gets called every time things go wrong. I could see the shift in his eyes, the realization. He thought he could rely on me forever. He thought that because I had money, I had to help. But I had reached my limit. The game was over. I stared at my parents, both of them now looking more like strangers than family. Their faces were a mix of confusion, desperation, and anger. We're family, Mom sobbed, her voice cracking. You can't do this to us, Elena. After everything we've done for you? Done for me? I laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of joy. It was sharp, biting, filled with years of pent-up frustration. Everything you've done for me has always come with a price, and I've paid it, every single time. There was a long pause as we all stood there, the silence thick and uncomfortable. Max's anger turned into pleading, but I wasn't moved. I've been the one holding this family together. You all keep running to me when you need help. Well, guess what? I'm not your backup anymore. I'm not going to keep sacrificing my life and my future for all of you to keep getting by. Max opened his mouth to argue, but I shut him down with one last word. No. I turned away from them and walked back into the house, closing the door behind me with a soft click. I didn't need to hear the rest of their excuses. It was over. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Monica. How are you doing? Need me to come over and throw a party for the new Elena? I smiled despite everything. Yeah, I'll be fine. But there's something I need you to see. I opened up my laptop, clicking on the file that had haunted me for years, the family spreadsheet. This was the record of every single cent I had given them. Loans I'd never been repaid, transfers I'd made to help with everything from Dad's medical bills to Max's latest failed venture. As I scrolled through the numbers, a sick feeling curled in my stomach. 5,764,213. That was the total I'd given them. And for what? A new house for Max, a vacation that I never wanted, medical expenses for Dad, and the endless guilt they laid on me every time I said no. No more. No more. This was it. I sat there staring at the screen, the numbers staring back at me. $5,764,213. The money I had drained from my own accounts over the years to keep my family afloat, to fix their problems, to play the role they assigned to me, the ATM, the savior, the one who was always supposed to make everything better. But the truth settled in. I was done. I had been their safety net for so long, and now I was cutting the cord. No more. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts, and I didn't need to check the security camera to know who it was. I had already seen their faces on the screen, the desperate, almost pleading expressions of my parents. But this time, there was no way out for them. I stood up, my legs trembling, but my resolve stronger than ever. I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. I walked over to the door and opened it. Mom and Dad stood there, their faces drawn, exhausted. Max was behind them, looking far less confident than he had earlier. His smug demeanor from before had disappeared, replaced by something I hadn't seen in him for a long time. Fear. "We need to talk," Mom said, her voice barely above a whisper, like she was about to crumble under the weight of the conversation. "I think we've talked enough," I said, stepping aside so they could come in. They didn't sit down right away. Max lingered by the door, looking like he was about to say something, but I could see he was already calculating his next move. He was used to getting his way, and that meant putting on the act of the concerned son. But this time, the game had changed. "Listen," Dad started, his voice stiff. "We understand that things have been hard, but Max, he's struggling. He needs this house, Elena. You're the only one who can help." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Dad, you don't get it. Max doesn't need help. He needs to learn how to take responsibility for his own life. I learned that the hard way," I said, my voice rising. "You all taught me to keep giving, to keep fixing things for everyone else. But where's the lesson in that? Where's the lesson in teaching someone to never face the consequences of their actions?" Max's face twisted with indignation. "I didn't ask for this, okay? I didn't ask for you to always be the one to bail me out. You've got everything you need. Why can't you just help me for once? Just once, you could be the one who gives." His words hit me like a slap, but they only made me more resolute. "Max, I've given you everything. And every time I did, it wasn't enough. I've given my time, my money, my life to help you, and I never once asked for anything in return." I took a breath, my mind racing through the years, the endless sacrifices. "But now I'm asking for something. I'm asking you to figure it out on your own, to finally stand on your own 2 feet." Max looked at me, eyes widening as if I had just betrayed him. He took a step forward, voice cracking with frustration. "I don't have anything. You took everything from me. And now you're taking this too? This house is everything. You know how much it means to me. And you're going to let me lose it because you're too selfish to help your own brother?" Selfish? The word reverberated in my head. It was the same word they'd always used against me to guilt-trip me into giving more, doing more, sacrificing more. It was a word they used to make me feel like I was doing something wrong by finally setting a boundary. "No, Max," I said, my voice low and steady. "What's selfish is you expecting me to keep fixing things for you. What's selfish is you not once considering how much it's costing me, emotionally, financially. You think this house is everything to you? Well, guess what? It's not more important than my peace of mind. It's not more important than my life, and I'm done paying for your mistakes." Max took a step back, his face pale. For the first time I saw the fear in his eyes, the realization that I was not the person I used to be. He'd never had to face the consequences of his actions before. He was about to. There was a long, heavy silence. Mom's face was drawn with sorrow, but I didn't care anymore. They had always used sorrow as a tool to manipulate me, to make me feel like I was the one who needed to fix everything. I turned to Dad, who was standing behind Mom. His face had softened, but there was still a trace of anger there, probably because I had stopped being the obedient daughter who did everything they asked. "Dad, you're mad at me, aren't you?" I asked, looking him in the eyes. "For not just giving in? For not being your backup anymore? He didn't respond right away, but when he did, his voice was strained. Elena, this isn't how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to help your family. We've always helped you. Helping me? I scoffed. Helping me was never the point, was it? It was always about what you needed, what you wanted from me. Every time you couldn't make ends meet, you'd come to me. Every time you needed a new house, a new car, a vacation, it was my responsibility, and I've had enough. Max was visibly shaking now. You don't care, do you? You don't care about family. I shook my head slowly. That's where you're wrong. I do care. But not at the cost of my own life. Not anymore. I could see the anger building in Max's eyes. He wasn't used to being told no. He wasn't used to having his plans disrupted, but he would have to learn, just like I had. You're ruining everything, he hissed, his voice laced with venom. You're breaking up the family. You did that, Max. You and Mom and Dad, I said quietly, but firmly. You broke this family long before I ever did anything. I'm just the one who's finally calling it like it is. The silence in the room was suffocating. Max was angry, but I was done. I wasn't going to take the blame anymore. I wasn't going to carry the burden of their decisions any longer. They had to carry their own weight now. You'll regret this, Max spat, storming out of the house. His words echoed, but they didn't faze me. I turned to my parents, who were still standing there, stunned by my resolve. Mom's eyes were filled with tears, but they were no longer tears of sympathy. They were tears of regret. Mom, I said softly, this isn't my fault. I'm not the one who broke the family. You did this to me, all of you. She said nothing. She couldn't. They knew it was true. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Dad. I closed the door softly behind me, leaving them standing there, their family intact in name but broken beyond repair. I took a deep breath and sat back down at my desk. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Monica. You did it. You're free now. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I opened up my laptop once more, staring at the spreadsheet. The total had changed. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about something far more valuable, my freedom. I looked at the numbers on my screen, 5,764,213. That was the total. The price of my family's dependency. The price of years spent trying to fix everything for them, to be the one who picked up the pieces every time they fell apart. And yet, when I finally stopped, when I finally drew the line, there was no gratitude. No recognition for what I'd done, for the life I'd sacrificed just to keep them happy. I sat back in my chair, the weight of the moment settling over me. I could hear the echoes of Max's angry words, the accusations that I was the one destroying the family. But I knew better. I wasn't the one destroying anything. I was the one finally stopping the cycle. I was the one who had been gaslighted into believing that my worth was tied to how much I could give, how much I could sacrifice. But no more. The doorbell rang again. It was 10 p.m., but I didn't need to check the security camera to know who it was. I had been expecting this. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it without hesitation. Max was there, standing with a small duffel bag slung over his shoulder. His eyes were red from crying, his face a mix of desperation and pride. He wasn't going to give up. I've been thinking, he began, his voice shaky, but there was a stubbornness in it. I've been really thinking, and I shouldn't have reacted like that earlier. You're right. I've taken advantage of you for years. But I swear this house, it's important. Please, Elena, I need you. You're my sister. I didn't mean what I said. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there watching him. For the first time, I saw the cracks in his armor, the vulnerability, the fear. But I had been here before. I had seen this act too many times. The pleading, the apologies that never lasted. It was the same song and dance, just with different words. Max, you've been using me for years, I said quietly. Every time you needed something, I was the one to come through. But now you think just because you said a few nice words, I'm supposed to forget everything? His eyes widened. What do you mean? What do you want me to say? I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I know I've been an asshole, but this is about family, Elena. We're supposed to help each other. Family, I scoffed. Family is not about draining someone dry. It's not about manipulating people into giving until they have nothing left. I've been your backup for so long, Max. But I'm done. I'm not your ATM anymore. I'm not anyone's ATM. I could see the anger flare up in him again, but this time, it wasn't the same. This time, he was on the defensive, and I could feel my control over the situation shifting. He was losing ground, and I wasn't going to let him back in. You're making a huge mistake, Elena, Max spat. You think you can just cut everyone off like this? You think you're better than us now? You think you can live in your big house with your fancy business, and we'll all just get by without you? I looked at him, taking in his words, but I didn't feel the guilt I expected. I didn't feel the weight of his accusations pressing down on me. Instead, I felt something much stronger: relief. No, Max, I said softly. I think you're the one who needs to figure out how to live without me. You've been given every opportunity. You've had every handout, every break, every chance, and you've squandered them. You can't keep blaming me or mom or dad for your choices. Max opened his mouth to say something else, but I held up a hand, silencing him. You're going to figure this out, Max. You're going to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet, because I'm not here anymore. I'm done. And I'm not going to keep bailing you out when you get into trouble. I'm not your safety net anymore. His face twisted with rage, but there was no more fire in his words. He was cornered. He had nothing left to throw at me. I'll leave, Max said finally, his voice shaking. But you'll regret this. You'll see. You'll regret not helping me when I needed you the most. And with that, he turned and stormed off, disappearing into the night. I closed the door behind him, leaning my back against it as I let out a long, shaky breath. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had done it. I had set the boundary. I had walked away, and for the first time it felt like I was living for me. I walked back to my desk, opened my laptop, and stared at the numbers on the screen once more. The money didn't matter anymore. It wasn't about the dollar amounts. It was about reclaiming my life. And then my phone buzzed again. Another message from Monica. You did it, huh? I'm so proud of you. You don't know how many women would have never been able to do what you just did. I smiled, even though my heart still felt heavy. This wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to walk away from everything I had known. From the family I had tried so hard to fix. But it was necessary, for me, for my future. I'm ready for whatever comes next, I replied, ready to finally live for myself. And that was it. I was free. Free from the weight of my family's expectations. Free from the chains I had bound myself to for so long. As I sat back in my chair, a sense of calm settled over me. I wasn't going to play their game anymore. I wasn't going to be the daughter who was always expected to fix things. I was going to be Elena, just Elena, and that was enough. The next few days felt like a strange mix of relief and anticipation. There was a quiet in my house that hadn't been there before. I could hear the hum of my thoughts clearer now, thoughts that had been drowned out by years of family obligations. But even as I felt lighter, I knew the storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. My phone rang early the next morning. I glanced at the screen. It was my lawyer, Zechariah. I had texted him the night before, after Max's outburst, to let him know what had happened. Hello, Elena. Zechariah's voice came through, cool and professional. I've been in touch with the authorities, and I'm going over your file. It looks like we have some work to do. Are you prepared for the next step? I nodded, though he couldn't see me. I'm ready. I need to stop them before they drag me back into their mess again. Zechariah had always been the calm in the storm. He had been instrumental in helping me secure the documents and financial records that exposed my family's manipulation. What started as small loans and transfers turned into a web of deceit that spanned over a decade, and I wasn't about to let them get away with it anymore. We've got everything in order, Zechariah continued. I'll be sending a letter to your parents today. I recommend they review their options carefully. If they don't cooperate, I'll be filing a formal complaint with the authorities. The thought of involving the authorities felt surreal, but deep down, I knew it was the only way forward. It was the only way I could ensure they never took advantage of me again. This wasn't about punishing them. It was about making them face the consequences of their actions. I want them to know I'm serious, I said, my voice steady. I want them to see that they can't use me anymore. I understand, Zechariah replied. I'll handle it from here. Just focus on taking care of yourself. This will take time, but we'll make sure they can't touch you again. I hung up, feeling the weight of the next chapter settle in. But it wasn't fear that I felt. It was determination. For once, I was taking control of the narrative. For once, I wasn't going to be the one who cleaned up their mess. The days following that call were oddly quiet. Max hadn't reached out again, and my parents had gone radio silent as well. Part of me expected them to come crawling back, but something in my gut told me they were only beginning to realize the gravity of what had just happened. It was a strange sense of freedom, yet the guilt was still there. I had been trained for years to feel guilty when I didn't give, to feel like a bad daughter when I didn't comply. But as I stared at my phone, waiting for a text that never came, I realized just how powerful it felt to stand my ground. Then, on the 5th day after I cut ties, my phone buzzed with a message from my cousin, Lucia. Lucia had always been the black sheep of the family. She had been branded a troublemaker for questioning the family's dynamics years ago, specifically, the way my mother had manipulated her into signing away her trust fund. When I opened the message, I almost couldn't believe it. Lucia was inviting me to meet her. I heard what you did. I'm proud of you. Meet me at the Grand Oaks Cafe tomorrow. I think it's time we talk, the message read. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. Lucia was the one person in the family who had gone through the same thing I had, though in a much different way. She had fought back years ago when they tried to take her trust fund, and I had seen her as an example of strength. She'd been the one to leave the family's toxic grip, the one who had walked away when the rest of us had stayed. There was something in her message that called to me, an unspoken understanding. We had both been through the fire. It felt like we were on the verge of something important. The next morning, I drove to the Grand Oaks, my mind buzzing with possibilities. Could this be the moment where everything changed? Could this be the start of something bigger, something more empowering for both of us? When I walked into the cafe, I saw Lucia sitting at the back, a martini in front of her. Her sharp eyes met mine as I approached, and for the first time, I saw something in her face that was completely new. Hope. Hey, cousin, she said, her voice low but strong. I knew you'd come around eventually. I sat down across from her, unsure of what she meant, but she didn't wait for me to ask. I've been following your story, she continued, tapping her phone. I'm glad you finally did it. I've been there. I tried to stand up for myself years ago, but they made me the villain. They tried to paint me as crazy, unstable, and difficult, just like they did with you. But look at you now. You've got your power back. I listened as she talked, as her words resonated with everything I had been feeling. Lucia wasn't just talking about surviving. She was talking about something bigger, something that could change not just our lives, but the lives of women like us who had been silenced, manipulated, and financially abused by their own families. I've spent years fighting for what's right, Lucia said, her smile tight but determined. But you're about to do something they never saw coming. You're not just fighting for yourself anymore, Elena. You're fighting for every woman who's ever been told that her success isn't hers. Every daughter who's been treated like a bank account. You're about to change everything. I sat back, stunned. I had never thought of it that way. For so long, it had felt like I was fighting a battle I had to fight alone. But Lucia was right. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was bigger than my family. This was about every woman who had been pushed into a corner by her own blood, every daughter who had been expected to sacrifice herself for the comfort of others. I've been documenting everything, Lucia said, pulling out a USB drive. The financial abuse, the manipulations. I've been gathering evidence for years, and now I'm ready to take it public. You're not the only one they've hurt. I stared at the small device in her hand, my heart racing. What did she mean? She couldn't be serious. You're not alone in this, she said softly. We're not alone anymore. I couldn't take my eyes off the small USB drive Lucia slid across the table. There was something about it, something quietly powerful, as if it held the key to something much bigger than just our personal grievances. The weight of the moment settled over me. My mind raced, connecting dots I hadn't even noticed before. "You've been collecting evidence?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "How long have you been planning this?" Lucia gave me a wry smile, the kind that spoke volumes. "Since the moment they decided I was difficult. Since they decided my worth was tied to how much I could give, how much I could sacrifice. You and I aren't the only ones who've been abused like this, Elena. There are countless other women out there just like us, women who are being financially drained by the people who should love them most." I sat back, absorbing her words. The gravity of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about my family anymore. This was about a much deeper, more insidious issue that so many people, especially women, had been quietly suffering from. Financial manipulation, disguised as love, loyalty, and family obligation, was a pattern that ran much deeper than I had realized. "I've been thinking about this for a while," Lucia continued, her voice steady and firm. "You and I have always been the black sheep in the family. But now, we're the ones with the power. We're the ones who are going to make sure this stops. We're going to show everyone what it looks like when you stop letting people take from you. No more guilt trips, no more empty promises. It's time for them to face the consequences." I looked down at the USB drive, my hands shaking as I picked it up. It was a symbol of everything I had been running from, and now it was the key to my future. I realized, in that moment, that I was no longer afraid of my family's wrath. I wasn't afraid of what they might say or do. I had spent years being scared, being manipulated, being guilted into staying in their toxic orbit. But that was over now. "You're right," I said, finally meeting her gaze. "It's time for them to face the truth. It's time for me to stop being the one who cleans up after everyone. I've spent years giving everything I had, and now it's their turn to deal with the consequences." Lucia's smile widened. "Exactly. You're going to get back everything they took from you, and then some. You're going to start living for yourself. No more guilt, no more family first. This time, it's you first." I felt a surge of adrenaline. The fear that had been creeping up inside me was starting to fade. What I had feared the most, being the bad daughter, the one who didn't play along with the family's expectations, was actually the one thing that would set me free. No more living in their shadow, no more being the convenient one who was always there when they needed something. It was my turn now. We spent the next few hours discussing what the next steps would be. Lucia had a plan, and it wasn't just about taking action against my family. It was about creating something bigger, something that would help women like us break free from these patterns of financial abuse. She had been working behind the scenes for years, documenting everything her family had done to her. And now, she wanted to use that information to empower other women who were trapped in similar situations. "I want to start a nonprofit," Lucia said, leaning forward. "A place where women can come together and share their stories, get support, and get the resources they need to break free. We'll help them fight back against financial abuse, against manipulation, against the toxic expectations that hold them back." I stared at her, a sense of awe filling me. This wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about getting revenge on my family or getting my money back. This was about something much bigger, creating a movement for women who had been silenced, for daughters who had been taken advantage of for too long. "I'm in," I said without hesitation. "Let's do it." Lucia's eyes sparkled. "I knew you'd say that. We're not just going to expose our families. We're going to help others break their chains too. We're going to show them that it's possible to walk away, to say no, to finally put yourself first." That night, I went home with a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in years. The weight of my family's expectations still lingered, but I knew I was done with them. They were no longer my responsibility. I was no longer the one they could turn to when things went wrong. I wasn't going to be the one who carried their emotional and financial burdens any longer. A few days later, the letter from Zechariah arrived. It was formal, polite, but firm. My parents were being asked to acknowledge their financial mistakes, to pay back the money they had taken from me over the years, and to take responsibility for their actions. If they didn't comply, legal action would follow. I didn't know what to expect after sending that letter, but part of me knew what was coming. They were going to try to fight back. They were going to resist. They always did. But this time, it was different. This time, I had a plan. And it wasn't just about getting my money back. It was about taking control of my life, reclaiming my power, and helping others do the same. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The fallout from the letter was immediate, and I could see the cracks starting to show. My parents, who had always been the picture of calm, were unraveling. They couldn't understand why I was doing this to them, why I was no longer the daughter who would bail them out when they needed help. Max, predictably, was furious. He'd been counting on me to save him, just like always. But when I refused, he lashed out. His anger was nothing compared to the guilt trips he tried to lay on me. But this time, I wasn't buying into it. Lucia was right, I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't trapped in the cycle anymore. And it felt so good. The next few weeks felt like a battle in slow motion. My family's reaction to the letter wasn't exactly a surprise. My mother, who had always played the role of the emotionally manipulative matriarch, went into full damage control mode. She called incessantly, sending me long, tear-soaked messages. But this time, I didn't let myself fall for it. I didn't rush to pick up the phone. I didn't fall into her trap of guilt. Instead, I focused on what mattered. I was building something for myself. The nonprofit idea Lucia and I had discussed was starting to take shape, and the more I worked on it, the more clarity I had. I wasn't just walking away from my family's emotional manipulation, I was paving the way for others to do the same. Lucia was instrumental in getting things off the ground. She had a vision for the nonprofit, something that would not only give women a safe space to share their experiences, but also equip them with the tools to stand up to financial abuse. The more we talked, the more I realized how many women were suffering in silence, just like I had. But while we worked on our new venture, the drama with my family continued to escalate. Max's anger had reached new heights. Every time I turned around, there he was, either texting or showing up at my door, demanding that I fix the situation. I had expected him to be angry, but what surprised me was the level of desperation in his voice. "Elena, this is ridiculous!" he shouted one day when I picked up the phone. "You're ruining the family! You can't just walk away from us like this. What are we supposed to do without you?" I held the phone away from my ear, trying to block out the emotional manipulation. I'd heard it all before. "Max, I'm not ruining anything. You're the one who's been sucking me dry for years, and now you think I'm just supposed to give in again? No." "But Mom," he continued, as if I didn't already know, "she's falling apart. You're tearing her apart. You've made her cry more than anyone else. You can't just leave us like this." I felt a coldness settle over me. "She's crying because she's finally seeing the truth. I'm not the one who made her cry, Max. You are. You and Dad and Mom, you created this mess, and now you're blaming me for wanting out." I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, but my calmness made Max even angrier. "You're a selfish bitch, Elena. You always were. You think you're better than us. You think you're above us, but you're not." I laughed, but it wasn't out of amusement. "No, Max, I'm not better than you. I'm just finally better to myself." I hung up before he could say anything else. I knew the conversations with my family were going to keep coming. They were going to keep trying to guilt me, to make me feel like I was betraying them. But I wasn't going to let it work. I had to remind myself every day that the only way to truly break free was to stop caring about their opinions. The next day, I received a message that left me feeling both empowered and uneasy at the same time. It was from my lawyer, Zechariah. The authorities had started their investigation into my family's financial mismanagement, and the evidence was mounting. He mentioned that the authorities were considering criminal charges for fraud and financial manipulation, especially in regard to the forged documents and misappropriated funds from my trust. At first, the thought of my parents facing legal consequences didn't sit well with me. I wasn't a vengeful person. I didn't want to see them behind bars. But then I realized this wasn't my fault. They had brought this on themselves. I was simply making sure they faced the consequences of their actions. The weight of the emotional manipulation and financial abuse I had suffered could no longer be ignored. Lucia was the first person I called after reading the email from Zechariah. Her voice was filled with a quiet excitement. "This is it, Elena. This is what we've been working toward. It's time for the truth to come out. We've been quiet for too long. This isn't just about your family. This is about everyone who's been victimized by this kind of manipulation." I agreed with her. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about shining a light on the systemic problem of financial abuse within families and helping others who were too afraid or ashamed to speak out. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with all the things that had to be done. The nonprofit was gaining traction. We had meetings scheduled with financial advisors, legal experts, and advocates for women's rights. But there was still the looming question: how much further was I willing to go? How far would my family push me before I completely cut them off? The next morning, as I made my coffee, I saw a text from Lucia. "It's time," it said. "We're going public. Your story. Let's get the word out. You're not alone anymore." She was right. The world had to hear this. Women like me had to know they weren't alone. The shame, the guilt, the fear that kept us silent, it was time to destroy all of it. We weren't going to hide anymore. I drafted the post, not sure what would happen next. It wasn't just a story about my family anymore. It was a declaration that I was done being manipulated, done being the one who was always expected to give. And once I hit send, there was no turning back. The post went live, and as soon as I hit that button, my phone exploded. Messages, texts, calls, people were reaching out. Women, men, everyone who had seen their own stories reflected in mine. It wasn't just my family who had caused harm. It was a pattern that had repeated itself for generations. There was a strange feeling of relief as I watched the notifications pile up. The flood of support was overwhelming. There were also messages from others who had been through the same thing, who had suffered the same financial abuse, the same manipulative tactics. But the real moment of clarity came when a message popped up from an unexpected source, one of my cousins. She had been silent for years, the family member who had chosen to remain distant from the drama. Her message simply read, "I'm proud of you, Elena. You're doing what I couldn't. Keep fighting." It was a simple message, but it hit me harder than I expected. It was validation. It was confirmation that what I was doing mattered. And it wasn't just for me anymore. The days following the post were a whirlwind. I had anticipated some pushback, but nothing could have prepared me for the tidal wave of messages, comments, and emails that flooded in. What started as a personal story quickly transformed into something far bigger. My phone didn't stop buzzing, and I found myself overwhelmed by the sheer number of people who reached out, women especially, who had experienced the same financial manipulation, the same guilt-driven pressure from their families. Each message I read reminded me that this wasn't just my fight anymore. It was a fight for every woman who had been told her worth was tied to how much she could give. It was a fight for the women who had been silenced for years, too ashamed to speak up, afraid they would be labeled as selfish or ungrateful. I sat in my office one evening, scrolling through messages, when a particularly poignant one caught my eye. It was from a woman named Ava. "I'm 45, and I've been supporting my parents and siblings for as long as I can remember. I've had to cancel every personal goal, every dream I've ever had, to take care of them. I've felt so alone in this. Your post, it gave me the courage to finally say no. Thank you." I stared at the message for a long time. I had always thought I was the only one who felt like this. But here it was, proof that I wasn't. That message, along with hundreds of others like it, gave me the strength I needed to keep going. As the momentum built, Lucia and I started laying the groundwork for the nonprofit. We were both driven by the same purpose: to create a safe space for women who had been emotionally and financially manipulated by their families. It wasn't going to be easy, and there would be setbacks, but this was something that had to happen. I knew it was time to take the next step. With the support of my lawyer, Zechariah, we began putting together the necessary legal documentation to formally challenge my family. The more I dug into the evidence, the more disgusted I became with what I found. It wasn't just about the forged signatures or the stolen trust funds. It was the years of emotional blackmail, the way they used guilt to control me, to make me feel like I had to keep giving. I couldn't help but think of all the times I had been told I was too much or too ambitious. All the times my success had been undermined, made to feel like something negative. I had spent my entire life suppressing my own goals and dreams to play a role I never agreed to. But now, I was ready to break free. The hardest part, however, was confronting the reality of the situation. My parents were not going to take this lightly. I knew that. The guilt trips would come, the apologies would flow, and they would try to make me feel like I was the one in the wrong. But I had already made up my mind. There would be no going back. One evening, as I sat down to prepare for the legal proceedings, I received another text. This time it was from my mother. "Please, Elena, we need to talk. Your father is not well. He's been under so much stress and now you're making things worse. This isn't how families are supposed to be. We've given you everything. You owe us." I stared at the message for a long time, the familiar guilt crawling its way up my spine. But then I stopped myself. No, I was not going to let them manipulate me into feeling guilty anymore. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I picked up the phone and called Zechariah. "We're going to move forward with the case," I said, my voice firm. "No more delays. No more excuses." Zechariah's calm, reassuring voice came through. "You're doing the right thing, Elena. You're not alone in this. The truth is on your side." His words gave me the strength to follow through. That night, I drafted a letter to my parents, informing them that I was no longer willing to participate in their financial games. The letter was clear, but not vindictive. I wasn't interested in revenge. I just wanted them to face the reality of what they had done. I didn't send it right away. I wanted to make sure every word was perfect, that nothing could be misinterpreted. But the moment I hit send, I knew there was no turning back. It felt like a door closing on a chapter of my life I'd spent too long trapped in. The next morning, I woke up to a string of texts. From my father, from my mother, from Max. They were all desperate. They were all accusing me of abandoning them, of ruining the family, of turning my back on the very people who had raised me. But there was one text that caught my eye. It was from my cousin Lucia. "It's time," she wrote. "The world is ready for you." And just like that, I knew. The decision was made. I was done playing the victim, done being the good daughter, the one who always gave and never asked for anything in return. It was time to start living for myself. It was time to stop apologizing for being successful. It was time to stop apologizing for being. That evening, I received a call from the women's advocacy group I had reached out to months earlier. They had seen the post. They had read the comments. And now, they wanted to help me create a program to assist women like me. Women who had been financially abused, emotionally manipulated, and silenced for too long. In that moment, I realized that everything I had gone through, every bit of pain, every struggle, every sacrifice, had led me to this point. It wasn't just about my family anymore. It was about helping others who had been through the same thing. It was about creating a space where women could stand up, speak their truth, and take back their power. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every woman who had ever felt powerless, trapped, and alone. I woke up the next day with a new sense of purpose. The weight of my family's expectations was no longer crushing me. The guilt, the shame, the fear, they were all things of the past. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally breathing. And it felt incredible. The call with the women's advocacy group the night before had been a turning point. They were ready to help me build something that could make a real difference. They had the resources, the connections, and the determination to take this movement to the next level. But the most important thing they had was the belief in me. I wasn't just a daughter fighting against her family's manipulation anymore. I was a voice for other women who had been trapped in similar situations. The message was clear. This wasn't just about personal healing, it was about collective empowerment. As the days went on, I kept hearing from more and more people, women who had been in similar situations, who had been told that their worth was defined by their ability to give. The more I listened, the more I realized how deeply this issue ran. It wasn't just an isolated family problem. It was a pattern, a systemic issue that affected families all over the country. Women were constantly expected to be the caregivers, the providers, the fixers, and when they couldn't give anymore, they were labeled selfish. The nonprofit Lucia and I were building was taking shape quickly. We started reaching out to therapists, legal experts, and financial advisors who could help women in similar situations navigate their own battles. We weren't just going to give them a safe space, we were going to equip them with the tools they needed to stand up for themselves, to reclaim their financial independence, and to break free from toxic family dynamics. But as the work began to pile up, so did the pressure from my family. Max was still furious, sending text after text accusing me of abandoning him. He couldn't understand why I wouldn't just help him. "I need that house," he wrote. "Why can't you just be there for me like you always were?" I didn't respond. I knew what was coming next. My mother had started posting on social media, passive-aggressive Bible quotes, messages about the sin of abandoning family, the eternal punishment for those who were ungrateful. She was doing exactly what I had predicted, trying to manipulate me with guilt. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly as I scrolled through her posts. For years, I had been her punching bag, her emotional support, her financial crutch. And now that I had stopped, now that I had taken control of my own life, I was suddenly the villain. But I was no longer going to let them define me. I was no longer going to let their toxic behavior manipulate me. And as I thought about my mother's posts, I realized something that made my resolve even stronger. If they truly loved me, they wouldn't be treating me like this. They wouldn't be using guilt and manipulation to control my actions. They wouldn't be accusing me of being selfish for wanting to protect myself. They were trying to tear me down because they couldn't handle the truth of what I was doing, and I wasn't going to let them. That afternoon, Lucia and I met for coffee to go over the plans for the nonprofit. She was as driven as ever, but I could tell she was worried. We had been so focused on getting the word out and setting up resources for women that I hadn't noticed how much it was taking a toll on her. "Are you okay?" I asked as she sat down across from me. "You've been looking a little drained lately." She shook her head, a half smile tugging at her lips. "It's just been a lot. But it's good, you know? We're building something important here. This isn't just a project, it's a revolution." I smiled. "I know. It feels like we're really doing something big." "We are," Lucia replied, her voice firm. "And we're going to keep pushing no matter what. They won't like it. They'll fight back. They always do. But we're going to keep moving forward. We're going to make sure women like us have a voice." I felt the fire of determination ignite inside me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every woman who had been financially and emotionally exploited by her family. Every daughter who had been expected to sacrifice everything for the people who were supposed to love her. We spent the next few hours mapping out the future of the nonprofit, how we would reach more women, how we could bring awareness to the issue, and most importantly, how we would support those who were ready to break free from toxic family dynamics. By the time we left, I was exhausted but exhilarated. This was real. This wasn't just talk anymore. We were building something that could change lives, something that could help women reclaim their power. Later that evening, as I sat down to review some legal documents for the nonprofit, my phone buzzed again. I saw a message from Max. I had been dreading this moment. "I talked to Mom and Dad. They said you're going too far. They said you're hurting the family. You need to stop. Please, Elena, just help me. This isn't about money. This is about family." I sat there for a moment, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. My family was still trying to pull me back in. They still didn't understand. They still couldn't see that this wasn't about money. It was about me taking my life back. I didn't respond to Max's message. Instead, I opened my email and sent out an update to the women who had reached out to me. I shared my story, but more importantly, I shared their stories. I was showing them that they weren't alone. I was giving them a platform to speak up, to reclaim their power. And as I hit send, I realized something profound. This was my new family. The women who had been through what I had. The ones who were ready to break free and start living for themselves. My phone buzzed again, and I saw a message from Lucia. We're doing this. We're changing everything. I smiled and texted back, "We are." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. The nonprofit, which had once been a distant dream, was rapidly taking shape. Lucia and I had connected with a number of key people, therapists, financial experts, and advocates, who were eager to help us get this off the ground. It wasn't just about providing resources for women who had experienced financial abuse. It was about empowering them to take control of their lives and break free from the cycles of manipulation that had kept them bound for years. But as we gained traction, my family's attempts to pull me back into their drama only intensified. One day, while I was sitting at my desk, working on the nonprofit's website, my phone buzzed. I didn't have to look at the screen to know who it was. The relentless messages from Max had become a constant. But this time it wasn't just him, it was my mom and dad too. They were trying to guilt trip me once again, this time using my grandmother's name. "Your grandmother would be so disappointed in you," they wrote. "Family is everything. You've turned your back on us. Do you really want to be the one who destroys the family legacy?" I stared at the message, feeling that familiar rush of anger, frustration, and sorrow. They had learned well how to play the family loyalty card, pulling on my heartstrings, trying to manipulate me into feeling like I was doing something wrong. But this time, I wasn't buying it. Instead of responding, I sat back in my chair and took a deep breath. I thought about everything I had been through, the years of manipulation, the guilt trips, the pressure to give. I thought about how much I had sacrificed for their comfort, for their approval, only to be treated like an afterthought when it came time to stand up for myself. No more. I opened my email, clicked on the message thread from the women's advocacy group, and read the encouraging words that filled my inbox. It wasn't just their words that gave me strength, it was the sheer number of women who were now sharing their stories with me. "I finally said no," one woman had written, "and it feels like the first time in my life that I'm truly free. I've been carrying my family's financial burdens for over 20 years," another woman shared. "Thank you for showing me it's okay to say no. I've been afraid of being selfish, but I realize now that it's not selfish to protect myself." I felt a surge of emotion as I read these stories. These women were not just looking for help. They were ready to fight for their freedom. They were ready to take control of their lives, just like I was. I put my phone down and got to work. I spent the next few days drafting plans for our first online workshop. It would be a space where women could come together to talk about their experiences, get advice, and learn how to set boundaries with their families. We would provide tools and resources to help them reclaim their financial independence and emotional well-being. A few days later, as I was sitting in a coffee shop working on the website, I received a call from Zechariah. He had good news. The legal proceedings were moving forward. "We've received confirmation that the authorities are pursuing charges against your parents and Max for financial fraud," he told me. "This is going to be big, Elena. You're not just standing up for yourself anymore. You're standing up for everyone they've manipulated." I felt a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. I had always known this day would come, but the reality of it still hit me hard. These were my parents, my family. I had once tried to fix everything for them, but now I had to watch them face the consequences of their actions. "I never wanted it to come to this," I said quietly, my voice heavy with emotion. "But they've left me no choice." "You're doing the right thing," Zechariah replied. "It's not about punishment, it's about accountability. They've been getting away with this for far too long." I hung up the phone, the weight of it all pressing down on me. I thought about everything I had been through, all the years I had spent living for everyone else. But now, for the first time, I was living for myself. And that was worth every ounce of pain. As the weeks passed, the nonprofit started to gain more attention. Women were reaching out from all over the country, eager to share their stories and find support. We held our first virtual workshop, and the turnout was overwhelming. It wasn't just a small group of women, it was a community of people who had been silenced for far too long. I could see the transformation in their eyes, even through the screen. The women who had been afraid to speak out, who had been taught that their worth was tied to their ability to give, were beginning to realize that they were worthy of so much more. They were learning that it wasn't selfish to say no. They were learning that their boundaries mattered. And I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, not for me, but for all of us. We were breaking free, one woman at a time. One evening, as I sat down to read through some of the feedback from the workshop, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from my mother. "Elena, please," she wrote. "This isn't you. This isn't the daughter I raised. You're tearing this family apart. Please come home. We need you." I stared at the message for a long time, feeling the weight of her words. But this time, I didn't feel the same pull I had before. The guilt no longer had the same power over me. I had made the decision to walk away, and I was finally living my truth. I wasn't going to let their manipulations work anymore. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I was free. As the months went by, I continued to pour my energy into the nonprofit, watching it grow into something truly special. But it wasn't just about helping others. It was about my own growth, too. I had spent so many years fighting for my family, sacrificing my own happiness for their comfort. But now, I was fighting for myself. I was building a future where I didn't have to apologize for my success. A future where I could live authentically, free from the chains of guilt and manipulation. It wasn't easy. There were still days when I felt the sting of my family's abandonment, when I questioned if I was doing the right thing. But every time I looked at the messages from the women I was helping, every time I saw how their lives were changing, I knew I was on the right path. The real freedom came when I realized that I was the one in control now. My choices, my life, my future, they were all in my hands. And nothing, no one, was going to take that away from me again. Time continued to slip by, but for the first time, it felt like I had real control over my life. The nonprofit was thriving. We had started hosting monthly workshops and had created an online community where women could share their stories, give advice, and offer support to each other. I could see the transformation happening not only in the women we helped, but in myself, too. It was difficult to explain the sense of peace I felt now. I didn't have to answer to anyone anymore. I wasn't living my life to make my family happy or to fix their problems. I wasn't putting my dreams on hold to serve their needs. And the best part? I wasn't apologizing for it. But despite my growing sense of independence and success, there were still days when the weight of everything my family had put me through hit me like a ton of bricks. The emotional scars were still there. Every time I looked at my phone and saw a text or a missed call from my parents, I was reminded of the way they had manipulated me, the way they had always made me feel like I wasn't enough unless I was helping them. Those old wounds would never truly fade, but I was learning to live with them. I was learning how to move forward despite them. One night, I sat down to meet with Lucia to talk about our next steps. Our nonprofit was growing, but we knew it wasn't going to be enough. The issue of financial abuse was widespread, and we needed to expand our reach even further. We needed to push this conversation into the mainstream. "We're doing great," Lucia said, sipping her drink. "But this can't be just about us anymore. We need to go public. We need to get this into the media." I nodded, knowing exactly what she meant. If we wanted to make a real impact, we had to push this conversation into the public eye. Women like us needed to be heard. Their stories needed to be told. "How do we start?" I asked. "I'm ready." Lucia smiled, the kind of smile that said she had already thought of everything. "We need to start by sharing our stories. It's time for you to go public. You've been quiet about this for too long. It's time to take back the narrative." My heart raced. Going public with my story was a huge step, but I knew it was the right one. If I was going to stand up for others, I needed to stand up for myself first. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I had already shared my story with a small group of people, but this was different. This was putting myself out there in a way I had never done before. "Okay," I said, my voice firm. "Let's do it." The next few days were a blur of interviews, preparation, and gathering the courage to share my story with the world. I was scared, yes, but I was also excited. I knew that by speaking out, I was opening up a door for other women to do the same. I was helping to create a ripple effect that would echo far beyond my own experience. I worked with a media consultant who helped me craft my message. The goal wasn't just to air my family's dirty laundry, it was to expose the systemic problem of financial manipulation and emotional abuse within families. It was about showing the world that this wasn't just an isolated incident, it was a widespread issue that affected far too many people. When the day of the interview came, I felt a mix of nervousness and determination. As the camera rolled, I looked straight into the lens, ready to tell the world everything. I've spent my entire life trying to please my family, I began, my voice steady despite the nerves. I've spent years bailing them out financially, emotionally, and physically, but every time I did, it wasn't enough. I kept giving, but they never stopped taking, and it took me a long time to realize that it wasn't my responsibility to fix their problems. As I spoke, I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the moment when I could finally speak my truth without apology. I could feel the anger that had been buried for so long starting to fade. I wasn't angry anymore. I was empowered. I'm not the first person to go through this, I continued. I'm not the only one who has been financially exploited by their own family. I'm not the only daughter who's been made to feel guilty for setting boundaries. And that's why I'm here. To say that it's okay to say no. It's okay to protect yourself. You don't owe anyone your happiness, and you don't owe anyone your financial security. The interview lasted over an hour, and by the time it was over, I felt like I had just run a marathon. But I also felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. I had done it. I had shared my story, and it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone who had ever been financially or emotionally manipulated by their family. When the interview aired a week later, the response was overwhelming. Messages from women all over the country poured in, thanking me for speaking out, for sharing my story, for giving them the courage to do the same. But it wasn't just women who were responding. Men, too, were reaching out, many of them sharing their own stories of financial manipulation within their families. This wasn't just a women's issue. This was a human issue, and it was time for it to be recognized. A month later, I stood in front of a crowd of women at our first major fundraising event. We had raised enough money to expand our nonprofit's reach, to bring in more experts, and to help more women break free from the chains of financial manipulation. The room was filled with women who had come together to share their stories, to support each other, and to learn how to take back their lives. Some of them were tearfully grateful, others were quietly confident, but all of them had one thing in common. They had taken the first step toward reclaiming their power. As I looked out at the sea of faces, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't just about standing up to my family. This was about breaking the cycle of financial abuse that had been passed down for generations. This was about giving women the tools to protect themselves, to say no, to take back control of their financial futures. And as I stood there, speaking to the group, I knew that the journey was just beginning. We had a long road ahead, but I wasn't alone. We weren't alone. We were all in this together. The days after the fundraiser were a blur of activity. The momentum behind our nonprofit was growing faster than I had anticipated. More women were reaching out, eager to get involved, share their stories, and receive the help they needed to break free from the financial manipulation they had suffered in silence for so long. It felt like I had started a movement, and the weight of that realization was both exhilarating and overwhelming. The media coverage continued, and more interviews followed. Each time I spoke out, I felt stronger, more confident in my mission. But there were still moments when I felt the familiar tug of my family's expectations. They were still trying to reach me, still trying to make me feel guilty for everything I had done. They didn't understand. They probably never would. One evening, after a particularly intense interview, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my phone. There was another message from my mother. I had learned to ignore the calls by now, but the messages always hit harder. She never gave up. Elena, I'm begging you. This isn't you. This is not how we raised you. Please come home. We need you. Your father is sick. He needs you. Please, just come back. I stared at the words, feeling a familiar pang in my chest. But it was different now. I had heard this song and dance too many times. I wasn't going to fall for it again. I closed my phone and let out a long breath. It wasn't easy, but I knew I had made the right choice. I wasn't abandoning them. I was finally standing up for myself. And in doing so, I was setting an example for others to follow. The next day, I met with Lucia to discuss the next phase of our plan. Our nonprofit was growing, but we needed to start thinking bigger. We needed to make sure we had the infrastructure in place to reach even more women, to ensure they had the resources they needed to escape financial abuse. We've done the groundwork, Lucia said, her eyes focused and determined. But now it's time to scale up. We need to partner with other organizations, get more media attention, and really make sure we have the legal support in place to protect women who are going through this. I nodded. She was right. We had already helped so many women, but the work was far from over. This issue was much bigger than just our small nonprofit. We were building something that could truly make a difference on a national scale. And then, as we sat in the small cafe, brainstorming our next steps, I had an idea. It was bold, maybe even risky, but it felt right. What if we created a national campaign? I asked. What if we could get people to talk about this issue openly, normalize the conversation about financial abuse within families? We could use our platform, the media attention we've gotten, to get this message out there. Lucia's face lit up. That's genius. We could partner with influencers, experts, and advocates to create a campaign that speaks directly to the women who need it most. And just like that, our next big project was born. We would launch a nationwide campaign to raise awareness about financial abuse. We would provide resources, tools, and legal support to those who needed it. And we would do it by getting the conversation out into the open, by showing people that it's not just about money, it's about power. The weeks following that decision were a whirlwind. We reached out to influencers, activists, and experts who were passionate about women's rights and financial freedom. We partnered with online platforms, social media campaigns, and even news outlets to spread our message. The response was incredible. We received hundreds of messages from women all over the country, women who had been living in silence for far too long, trapped in abusive family dynamics where their worth was defined by their ability to give. But now, they were starting to see that it was okay to say no. It was okay to protect themselves. The campaign took off. Our website traffic surged, donations poured in, and most importantly, the women who had been voiceless for so long were finally finding their voices. They were coming together, sharing their stories, supporting each other, and breaking free from the patterns that had kept them shackled for years. It was a moment of triumph. But as I looked at the progress we had made, I also knew that there was so much more work to do. The fight was far from over. One afternoon, I received an unexpected message from an unknown number. The text read, "Elena, this is Zechariah. You need to meet with me. There's something urgent I need to discuss." My heart skipped a beat. It had been a while since I'd heard from him, and the urgency in his message immediately set me on edge. I called him back, and he picked up on the first ring. "Elena, I'm afraid we need to discuss your family's actions, specifically your parents and Max," Zechariah said, his voice low and serious. "There's been some new information that we need to act on immediately." I sat up straighter, anxiety creeping into my chest. "What's going on?" "I don't want to alarm you, but your parents have been trying to take more than just your money. They've been trying to steal your identity. They've forged your signature on several documents, including a line of credit they opened in your name. They've been trying to secure loans in your name without your consent." The world seemed to stop for a moment. My heart pounded in my chest as I processed his words. My family, my parents, had crossed a line that I hadn't thought possible. They were going after my credit. They were trying to destroy my financial future, just like they had done to so many others before me. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm afraid so," Zechariah replied. "We have everything documented. I'm going to need you to sign a few things to get this process started, but we have enough evidence to go after them legally." I took a deep breath. Do it. Go after them. I'm done being their victim. Zechariah reassured me that everything would be handled carefully and that I would be protected. But as I hung up the phone, the weight of the situation hit me. My parents had gone too far. They had betrayed me in ways I hadn't even imagined. And now, they would face the consequences. As the legal process unfolded, I found myself feeling a mix of anger and sadness. This wasn't how I had imagined things would turn out. But as I looked around at the women I had helped, at the community we had built, I realized something important. This wasn't just about family anymore. This wasn't about them. It was about us. It was about the women who had been silenced, manipulated, and controlled for too long. I had fought for my freedom. Now I was fighting for theirs. Thanks for watching. If my story resonated with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Join me on this journey and let's take control of our lives together. See you in the next video.